inside of my brain. When people ask me, as a certified brain injury specialist, people will ask me about how XYZ thing will affect people with brain injury. Specifically, because I do a lot of employment work, they'll ask me about employment. But anytime anybody asks me that question about how does this specific thing affect people with brain injury, this is kind of what the inside of my head looks like. Because I will start trying to picture all the different kinds of people who experience brain injury, all different ages, the different parts of the brain that can be affected, what can happen beforehand. And so then I'm always trying to think about how do I take that really diverse group of experiences and turn it into something that we can look at from a more universal sort of standpoint. And so one of the things that I wanted to do was think about, okay, well, what is one thing that every person with a brain injury, every family member of a person with brain injury shares? And one of the reasons why the holidays can be so stressful for people who experience brain injury or their caregivers is that they're all people. And people have a hard time with the holidays. And there's a number of reasons. A lot of people will think that it's mostly just because we're all so busy with parties and trying to get everything done for the holidays. But there's actually quite a bit that can go into that holiday stress for all people, again, not just the persons with brain injuries. So according to the American Psychological Association, the main things that can create problems for people around the holidays have to do with relationships, finances, and the physical demands that are created by the holidays. So I divided those up a little bit differently, talking about financial stress of the holidays. 2/3 of families find the holidays to be financially stressful. So that means a large majority of people find the holidays to be financially problematic. The other thing that we have to think about is the biological stress. So we eat more, we drink more, our sleeping patterns can change over the holidays. And the other thing is daylight savings time. Right before Thanksgiving is about the time that we push our clocks back, which means that we have fewer daylight hours. It got, like this year I noticed particularly, and maybe it's because I was thinking about this subject matter, but it was like right before Thanksgiving that it started to get so cold that it wasn't fun to be outside very often, although today it was nice to be out. So we get cabin fever, we don't have as many daylight hours, we don't have as much time that we can spend outside enjoying the activities that we normally enjoy. So that seasonal affective disorder kind of thing is also a really big problem for the holidays. And again, you know, all the extra sugar intake, all of that. Psychological, what we've experienced psychologically over the holidays. Unrealistic expectations. We get this sort of picture-perfect postcard view of what we think the holidays should look like, and sometimes it doesn't really measure up to that. Overstimulating environments. So the stores are busy, we're going to parties, there's a lot of people, the roads are busy. That can create stress for people. And in addition to that, people can feel a strong sense of loss over the holidays. And my picture of this is that largely it's because we experience time differently over the holidays than we do at other times. So if I asked you, what did you do every year for the last 20 years on April 17th? Unless it's your birthday, you probably don't have an answer to that question. Or if I said, how did you spend June 4th as a child, you probably wouldn't have an answer to that question. But you do know how you spent December 25th for the last 20 years, or how you spent December 25th as a child. And that creates a different way of experiencing time. So we have these very intense memories, and whether that's remembering when things were better, and so that can make us sad, or remembering things when things were worse, which could also make us sad or stressed. And then also, you know, divorce, death, obviously brain injury. These are things that we feel more intensely during the holidays. And then, you know, let's face it, family togetherness can create tension and irritation. You know, we're just spending more time with people who we may have some baggage with, or we may just find kind of irritating at times. And so that can create problems during the holidays for all people of all walks of life. So what makes it particularly hard for families who are dealing with brain injury? And one of the things that I did want to point out is that when we're talking about holiday stress for caregivers, there is a high likelihood, and if this isn't your particular situation, just know statistically, there's a high likelihood that we're talking about women. And the main reason for that is since males are 1.5 times more likely to experience brain injury, it's likely that the person with the brain injury is the male. And because women, the people who report the most holiday stress are women ages 18 to 59. So obviously women who are in that part of life where we're the people who are putting, so I always think, you know, Santa gets all the credit, but Mrs. Claus was probably doing all the work. So we got to remember that, you know, women put a lot of stress, and if it's the woman in your life with the brain injury, you also have to think about that it could be stressing her that she's not doing the traditional being the perfect holiday creator. Other things that can affect brain injury, finances can be particularly tight because of loss of income or because of hospital bills. Might be a good time to see your friendly disability resource specialist to work on increasing that income. But that finances can be hard. Biological and psychological stress are more problematic, not just for the person with the brain injury, but also for the caregiver. So if you're experiencing stress as a caregiver, you might find that extra holiday stress is just a little bit more like the camel, the straw that's, you know, an extra straw on that camel's back. Memory problems, like I said before, we had talked about how we experience memories over the holidays and how those memories can be especially painful. But with brain injury, we also have to deal with that we may have a loved one who's having memory issues. And so when the family is trying to remember good holiday memories, or remember this Christmas ornament, or remember when we did this, that can be a problem. Fatigue obviously is a problem for people with brain injury and also for their caregivers. And fatigue can be particularly hard over the holidays. Behavioral changes can be exacerbated by extra people and extra stress. So we have like a lot of extra people around, maybe people that we're not completely comfortable around, and if our loved one experiences some inhibitions or behavioral problems, that can get exacerbated during this time. Also, we could experience vision, hearing, and taste problems, and so during a time of year when those things there's a lot of extra, like visual, hearing, taste, smell, there's a lot of extra stimuli from that could be a problem. Break from routines are really big. We all know that with brain injury recovery, structure is very important. So when we're breaking those routines, that can create problems. Bowel and bladder control, when you're going from party to party or unwrapping gifts, that can certainly be hard. And depression or apathy can be a problem. And they're doing a lot more research in the area of apathy when it comes to brain injury. So that's different from depression. It would be more like a lack of motivation or a lack of goal-driven cognition. So a lack of being able to set goals and move forward and engage in goal-driven behavior. So there we go. We have officially established that the holidays are hard and tough and stressful, and that they are particularly hard and tough and stressful for people and families who are dealing with brain injury. So there was the first part, And now we got to think about what are we going to do about that. So what are we going to do to try to alleviate some of that, make some of that easier? So we're going to have a plan. We're going to have a plan for dealing with difficult situations. We're going to have a plan for dealing with the things that could come up over the holiday season. So predict, plan, and pace are your 3 P's for your holidays. You need to predict things that could cause problems, so be early, think ahead, plan on how you're going to take care of those, and pace. Pace for both the person with the brain injury. We don't want to push them harder than they can go, but also pace for yourself. How much can you handle, and are you trying to put too much on yourself as a caregiver? So plan to simplify. And I love this graphic because it says, you know, it may be, there could be this long winding road to get to where you need to be. And maybe it doesn't need to be quite that hard. So scaling back, if there is something about that you do for Christmas, decorating the house or some baking Christmas cookies or something that gives you a great deal of joy, by all means do those things that give you joy. If there is some aspect of dealing with the holiday season that causes you more stress than it gives you joy, just kind of don't do that thing. Try to really cut back and think about the things that are really going to add joy and relaxation to your holidays. Plan to keep up some kind of routine. Again, we know that structure is really important in the rehabilitation process, so we don't want to interrupt that too much. And we want to plan to think about what could be triggers for our loved ones so that we're really predicting and getting ahead. When I think of plan to simplify, you know, there's all kinds of things that you could do as far as cooking. There's a lot of recipes on the web about like easy five ingredients dishes and things like that. I know one holiday, for reasons that didn't have anything to do with brain injury, but my family did like a Trader Joe's Thanksgiving, and we had everything from Trader Joe's, and it was actually really fun and a lot easier. Kind of thinking about things like that, thinking about maybe simplifying the gift giving process. Maybe this is the year to say, you know, everybody buys one gift, or we do less expensive gifts, or, you know, something to make it a little bit easier. Also, so back to the 3 things that cause stress. Finances, we could do small inexpensive gifts or homemade gifts, biological healthier recipes, easier recipes. Psychological things, like for instance, if it's kind of painful to bring out all those old Christmas ornaments to look back on and remember how different days, maybe this is the year you make new ornaments for the tree and you do something different with your tree. Also, shopping online or when stores are not so busy is a good idea. We want to stay away from busy crowds if that's going to be overstimulating. Spreading out visits, so not trying to see everybody at once, not trying to get into those really crowded holiday parties. And some people have talked about going to less crowded church services, or, you know, maybe you have your religious ceremony at home instead of going to a really crowded church service. So just thinking about some creative ways that we can get around the things that we think might be problems. Some other creative ways that we could think, like if you think that blinking lights are going to be a problem, calling ahead to the host of a party and asking them, are there any blinking lights? This could be a problem for my loved one. Or what kind of activities are planned? This might be a problem, you know, so that you can make sure that your loved one knows what's going on. Conversations can be hard at these parties, so it might be a good idea to do some role playing, have some kind of easy topics that you could be talking about at parties, and then repeating or rephrasing topics when someone's talking at a party, just to kind of like help make that a little bit easier to help them follow the conversation. If your loved one is somebody who might have inappropriate behaviors or say inappropriate things, you might want to have a hand gesture or something like that. Thinking of a way to avoid alcohol. So we have this no thank you, since I was injured, I'm using medications that don't mix with alcohol, just anything. And like one of the things I was reading in it was like the tradition of everybody kissing at New Year's could be really confusing for somebody if they were having some cognitive issues. And so kind of thinking through stuff like that. And again, these are not, I'm not necessarily thinking that any one of the persons in this webinar is having these specific problems, but this is just a way of thinking about how are we going to think about what's coming up, how are we going to think about things that could be problems for our loved one in a variety of different situations. Is it conversation? Is it lights? Is it food? Is it addressing alcohol use? What are some ways that we can be early and think ahead about what these problems might be? And also to think ahead and about how you're going to give yourself some gifts over the holidays if you are the caregiver. So how do you give yourself extra time, relaxation, comfort? I mean, we could talk about this kind of ad nauseum about the need for the caregiver to make sure that you're making plenty of time for yourself. And maybe finding some creative ways, and this might be the time of the year to say, you know, instead of gifts, if someone could come over and relieve you of caregiving duties, maybe it's a time to relax with your partner and stop thinking, or your loved one, and stop thinking about, you know, the brain injury for a little bit and go do something that you enjoy. But definitely make time for yourself to reconnect to the people in your lives and to the things that give you joy. Another important thing, I think, is the idea of having an escape plan. And in this, I'm specifically thinking about, I know of a situation where someone had a loved one who had some unpredictable behaviors for quite a while, and the family wasn't able to spend time with that loved one because small children and the behavioral problems didn't mesh real well. But eventually, when they could spend time together, they ended up having the gathering in a neutral place. And the main reason was so that if the little ones needed to get out of the house because of unpredictable behaviors, it would be easy to get them out quickly. And that sounds a little over the top, but in this particular situation, it was kind of necessary. So think about who might need to leave, and are we in a place where they can leave? So that's one thing that I mean by an escape plan. The other thing is to have an escape plan from like parties and things like that, because these are things that can be really overwhelming to our loved ones who are experiencing brain injury. And so you might want to call ahead and talk to the host and say, is there a bedroom or a place in your house where my loved one could go and rest, maybe sleep, maybe watch television, listen to music, read a book, whatever it is that will relax them, but allow them to go ahead and have a place where they can get away. And it's an awesome idea to ask the host if that's something that might be available. And another thing that I wanted to talk about is not to, when you're planning, not to just think about ways to avoid disaster, but also to plan for opportunities. And this is really important at this point in time. There has been a lot of research done recently. A lot has come out about the idea of enriched environments. A report just came out of Tel Aviv University about, and this was with mice, and they weren't at all stressed about the holidays, but it was about having these enriched environments, and it's a big, big deal in neuroscience right now. And so they're talking about enriched environments and how enriched environments can help people have experience-dependent plasticity. So we all know the more that we engage, the more our brain grows, but they're doing a lot on a neurological level, synapses and things like that, to find that out. Now, so that's like big neuroscience talk, but for you, the caregiver, what that boils down to is that enriched environments, this thing that's like this big deal, is really anything that increases physical, social, and cognitive stimulation. And it may sound like I'm asking you to do the impossible, because I'm saying simplify, but also provide an enriched environment for your loved one. When actuality, the things that are considered enriched environments are the exact kinds of things that we tend to do more of over the holidays. So things like having friends over, attending dinners, watching games, walking and talking, going for long walks and having talks, playing games, particularly games like Scrabble or cards, playing other games that are good for cognitive therapy include Uno, Slapjack, memory games, Boggle. I know, like, my family goes to the dog park a lot. Cooking together, engaging in hobbies. Like, these are things that we might be more likely to do during the holidays, in part just because some of these are activities that kids really enjoy, and the kids are out of school and they have more time to do these things. Prolonged intense physical activity, so, you know, going out and, again, going for a walk or going to the gym. These things that maybe we should be making time for as part of our family bonding experiences are actually, on a neuroscience level, very beneficial. They also reduce anxiety in people, and are also shown to help with other, like, impulse control behavioral problems. So the other thing that we're going to talk about is letting go of expectations. I think expectations are one of the biggest dangers across the board. Again, brain injury or no, expectations are one of the things that can really cause problems for the holidays. So, you know, if we don't try to live up to the holiday card, if we realize that, you know, we have no idea what's going on in this family's life, and all those, you know, we get all those Facebook perfect family pictures of the holidays when we're getting on Christmas cards, to remember that everybody's having a hard time. And so what can screw us up most in life is the picture in our head of how it's supposed to be. And I feel like this can be particularly problematic for people who are dealing with any kind of acquired injury or acquired neurological problem. Because the holidays are supposed to be a lot of things. They are supposed to be a time for families and engaging and exchanging presents. They are supposed to be filled with love and joy and good memories, and you are supposed to be surrounded by people that you love. They're supposed to be a time for traditions and for giving and loving moods, and no one is supposed to ruin that experience for anybody else. So when families get together, if one person is doing something that's creating a problem or creating a situation where it's harder for, let's say, one person storms out in the middle of gift exchange, or some person has impulse control and is telling the kids that Santa doesn't exist, or something like that that's creating problems, that creates extra stress for us, because it's not keeping us up with that sort of picture-perfect idea that we want to see in our head. So when we come to the holidays, how are we going to deal with that idea of expectations? Because that's the time of the year where expectations tend to run particularly high. And I think that we have to think about acceptance. I think we have to accept where we are and where everyone else in our family is in the grieving process. And these are two kind of contradictory things. To accept where everyone is in the grieving process, including yourself, where you are in that grieving process, and to accept your loved one as they are now. This can be a little bit hard, but, you know, realizing that if you're feeling angry, if you're feeling sad, even if it's the holidays, those are okay feelings to have. but to also understand that for all people, the core of expectations are attempt to control or change others. So I think this is particularly hard for people who are dealing with this kind of situation, because at a really core level, we want our loved one to be better, and we want our loved one to be improving, and we want our loved one to feel less pain. But we also want our loved one to not engage in behaviors that make our life harder. And just being really mindful of where we're coming from. Because if where we're coming from is that we want our loved one to be helping our loved one, that is good. If we're coming from it that we want our loved one to get better because it makes our life easier, that is also okay, but you just need to keep in mind where you're coming at it. Because anytime you want someone to get better, that can also mean that what you want is for them to change. And I love this thing about Eeyore. One awesome thing about Eeyore is that even though he is obviously clinically depressed, Eeyore is obviously, having a problem. I'm not also say Rabbit's also probably OCD, but he still gets invited to participate in adventures and shenanigans with all his friends. They never expect him to pretend to be happy. They just love him anyway. They never leave him behind or ask him to change. So just keep in mind that while we also want to help our loved one, we don't want to make them feel pressure to change, because that can make them feel controlled, and that controlling factor can create even more problems. So we want to try to move from expectations to family closeness. So as opposed to trying to create the picture perfect family situation, what can we do to create a more close-knitted family environment? And I would say one of the things that we can do to help create that more close family environment is if we really try to get away from expectations and try to do more to create a close family knit environment. Part of that is being grateful. So even though we're having a hard time and we're dealing with brain injury, if we can think about things that we're grateful for, that will also help with moving through and getting away from those expectations. And gratefulness is something that I'm always a big fan of. So it's not happy people who are thankful, it is thankful people who are happy. So despite the problems that we're having in our life, what are some things that we can do to experience more gratefulness? So does anybody have any questions so far? Would anybody like to type in something about specific problems that they're experiencing or specific concerns that they have for the holidays?
There was actually one question,
because I think it would be
one question that was asked. Do you have any suggestions for explaining to other families who aren't as close to the situation about that need for routine or alterations to previous traditions or plans?
Oh, that is just really a lot about, just being honest. And one of the things that I really liked, I saw somewhere where it said, my brain needs a chance to rest. So if you can explain to family members that your loved one's brain needs more rest, and that maybe that's why we have to change those family traditions. Kind of like more information on exactly what it is what tradition it is that needs to be changed, because that would probably help me kind of fiddle through that thought process a little bit. But yeah, if you can talk to people beforehand, that's that whole planning aspect, is really talking to people beforehand about kind of what your family member's experiencing, why they might need to be, things might need to be a little bit quieter. And, honestly, it's not even just about the person with the brain injury. I mean, I think it's okay also to say, you know what, my life is really stressful right now. So if there is any way that we could simplify the holidays because of the stress that I am going through as a caregiver, I think that's also okay. So I don't know if that answers that question or not. So, Holly, were there any other questions or thoughts?
Um, oh, there was just a suggestion about some empathy techniques that have been used to try to help those family members who um, aren't there on a daily basis. So I think you're right, Diane. And the best thing that you can do is to just be honest, because I think a lot of times family members who aren't there every day, they just simply don't know, and they just need that education of kind of an explanation. But one of those empathy techniques that I'm getting is to try to help explain, how different life can be after a brain injury. Is one to have a person lift their foot up and with their foot level to the floor start moving in a circle at the same time as trying to sign their name. And 95% of people cannot do that. And that is just mildly stressful and difficult. Um,
Yeah, no, that's an awesome suggestion. For creating empathy. Um, I also think that it's not necessarily, I mean, I think especially when family members are around, one thing that I thought of that might be helpful is, yeah, is to do some of those empathy exercises and to utilize that as an opportunity for education, but also maybe utilize that as an opportunity to, as a family, maybe write letters, to try to uh, get more funding for the brain injury waiver or things like that, to make it a family effort to both understand and do some advocacy during this time period. And maybe your family members will feel more empathy if they can understand like sort of the magnitude of the problem and if they can participate in advocacy and awareness efforts. So to do, some things like that. Um, I think, maybe even getting, having some stories, telling some stories about, if you can have some articles that you can send your families beforehand or things like that to help them understand, maybe hook them up with some of the resources that are on the website for the Brain Injury Alliance even, can be really helpful. So, there was somebody who came up with this holiday Bill of Rights. You have the right to take care of yourself. You have the right to feel mixed emotions around the holidays. You have the right to spend time alone, to say no to party invitations, and to ask for help, and to enjoy the holidays the way you want and let others do the same. And I think that is one of the big important parts about having to celebrate the holidays anytime that you're dealing with any sort of extra family stress, is that if one person, like, okay, so you're talking about your family members and increasing empathy and having them understand the difference. I think some of it is to say, like, if everybody wants to go see holly jolly lights or whatever, but that's going to be stressful for your loved one, maybe they stay home, and the people who want to go do those things, and the people who don't, stay home and celebrate the holiday the way they want to. Just giving people a little bit more freedom. Again, like the idea of if you're at a party and you create that escape plan so that your loved one can maybe go to the party, come down, and enjoy the party for a little bit, but then also, I'm going to go back actually in this. I'm going to skip around a little bit because I want to pull up a specific one. But if you want to have them go to the party, but then make sure that you've talked to the host beforehand and really made sure that there's a place in that party where your loved one can go and spend some time separately from everybody else. So, that bedroom or something like that. I think that's just one example of a time when you're kind of trying to be creative and flexible about the way that you're spending the holidays. But you're giving everybody a chance to do what they want. So if you want to stay and enjoy the party, but your loved one's kind of touch and go, then making sure that they have a place to go. And then I also liked the ideas about like really kind of rehearsing through things with your loved one, kind of having a hand gesture if they're going to say something inappropriate, and rehearsing like those topics, just really being thinking creatively about how to deal with that. And then part of that is also doing some education with your family members. So does anybody else have any specific things that they're dealing with over this holiday season that they're kind of wanting to address?
Just a reminder on your toolbar there on the right, you can type in the chat box or the questions box, and then we can get those questions answered for you.
Because I feel like everybody's situation is going to be really different. And again, I really feel like it's important to do, to really think about that enriched environment part. And that's because not only when you're creating those opportunities, when you're creating more opportunities to do fun things or relaxing things such as the games or going for long walks, not only is that increasing, doing a lot of like neurorestorative stuff, but it is also something that can reduce anxiety. It is also something that can distract people from unwanted behaviors. Or from things that create anxiety for them. Cooking together can be a lot of fun and help people out a good bit. So do these seem like ideas that you guys feel like will help you? Is there anything else that I can provide? Because it's
Okay, we do have another question. My family member feels lonely during the holidays. They don't get invited to many parties that their old friends are invited to. Any suggestions with situations like that?
That's always a hard one because our lives change, and they are having a hard time with that. I would say reaching out and asking, to get together with those old friends can be helpful. That's another area where it might be really beneficial to be looking at opportunities to volunteer or get involved with other groups, maybe people that you've met through these organizations. The fact is that friendships do change. There are people who feel, whose lives, and there's people who lose friendships after brain injury. I would say if there's people that you feel like that you really can reach out to help your loved one be invited, that's awesome. But also it's very important to create new relationships, reach out to new people in your life that have come about because of the brain injury, and increase those supports. And, stay busy with the things that you can stay busy with. And I know that that's not particularly because they want to be invited to the parties that everybody's being invited to, and maybe they're not. If you feel like you can reach out to those people, I would maybe go with them, and maybe, talk with your loved one about rehearsing some of the things that you need to do when you're there. And I do think the reaching out part is important, because I think maybe people, it's not that they're purposely excluding you, it's just that maybe it doesn't occur to you that at this point in your life, that would be something that you'd be wanting to do. People just tend to include people that they've had in their life. Are these people that you feel like you could reach out to see if you could have them maybe get included, or do you feel like they're kind of brushing you off?
A response from someone else, so we'll see if we hear back from that person. But a response from someone else just wanted to comment that our family found volunteering, taking Meals on Wheels, serving others aids a deep sense of value. So they found that really helpful.
I think it does, and I think one of the things that we have to really remember is that for quality of life, it is incredibly important that people have a sense of purpose, and those volunteer activities, which are so prevalent during the holiday season, really can help us find that sense of purpose. And that might be something that we could be doing to sort of fill that void from those relationships that are kind of damaged because of the brain injury.
Okay, that's
So,
great. Another question.
mm-hmm.
Do you have any suggestions for navigating increased access to alcohol during the holidays? My family member is offered much more at the holidays than usual, as we all are. However, they don't manage it very well.
That really is going to require some practice, and talking to your loved one before you're leaving for the party. So repeatedly kind of having those conversations about what alcohol is going to do. Repeated conversations. That's one of those you really need to have a conversation with your family member and with the people who are going to be at the party about how alcohol is going to affect your loved one. That's a tough area, but I feel like people may probably largely do not realize what a big problem this is. And maybe if you talk to people beforehand and give them a heads up about, if you could kind of, help me out with this, help that, kind of, I don't want people to feel like they're being, babied or watched or whatever. But at the same time, really talk to your loved one and really talk to your family. Like, I know that we, all, are drinking over the holidays, but if we could kind of, as much as you can, get help from the people around you, because it really is that environmental um, thing. And also, kind of maybe coming up with some conversations with your loved one about, like, okay, do you understand what the outcome of this? Do you understand how it's affecting your brain? And having some conversations about how are you going to get it past that. But that is a really big problem that can create a lot. You're going to need a lot of communication, both with your loved one and with those family members. So hopefully you can get your family members to maybe tone down a little bit if they understand kind of the level of damage that it could be causing. And let me know if that helps, or if you need any more input on that.
No, I think that was very.
The other thing that I would really Okay, good. The other thing I would really suggest for everybody is talking with any care providers, with therapists, with psychologists, with your psychiatrist, whoever is in your circle of care, about how to deal with whatever your concerns are about things that they think would be particularly helpful for you to be doing over the holidays. Again, they may be able to come up with some of these activities that find fun. And also, even with the alcohol, like if you can get your loved one involved in like playing games with the kids and being involved with the food preparation, the more that you can get them involved with positive activities, the less that they're going to be likely to be involved in the negative activities. So as much as you can, try to infuse your environment with those positive, environmentally rich experiences. And volunteering is a huge one of those.
Okay, another question here. My husband was injured 3 years ago. He gets more depressed at the holidays since his brain injury, and even more this past year. How do others manage with this? If anyone has any suggestions, please feel free to weigh in.
Yeah, specific suggestions to that. It probably has something to do with, that whole continued, like when I was talking earlier about the way that we perceive time, that December 25th is different than April 17th, is probably why he's experiencing more depression over the holidays than he is during other times. But that idea of volunteering or creating new traditions, creating new things that your family can do. So maybe planning a trip during the holiday season, or maybe planning some volunteer activities over the holiday season, or I don't know what your husband enjoys, but if you can look at some things that he enjoys doing and infusing a little bit of more of that. I know that that can be a problem because people who are experiencing depression tend not to want to do those things. But what I would highly suggest is anything that your husband's doing that is more positive and more moving him out of the depression, to really focus on those. So when someone's feeling depressed, they're feeling less desire to do things. So anytime that he's looking like, here, if he goes out, just really encouraging if he's showing interest in any activity, to really encourage more of that. So, wow, you really enjoyed playing with the dog yesterday. Let's, play with the dog some more. Or, gosh, it was really anything that you can do to be providing purpose. So, wow, it was so helpful and so great to see how you were playing with your niece or your grandchildren yesterday, and that was really, really helpful to me, and you can really see how much they enjoyed it. Just anything that you can do to be positive and reinforcing for positive behaviors, that can really, and kind of downplaying the depressive thoughts. So, not asking them about that too much, but really trying to reinforce anything that looks positive.
Great. And we did have a couple suggestions from others as well. Any type of exercise, going for a walk, walking the dog seems to help. Extra vitamin D, since we don't get that so much in the winter, that can add to our depression as well. You can get some of those lights for seasonal depression, things like that. Getting a pet, also a good suggestion.
Yeah, I would just, really for the depression, the best thing is to just, like they said, the exercise, the vitamin D, is to really just try to infuse as much positive experience into the holidays as you can. Getting together and all cooking together, getting, if there's kids in the family, and having them come over and bake cookies and decorate cookies or make a meal. Stuff like that can be really uplifting. And doing the volunteering, doing a Secret Santa thing or something like that. Or not Secret Santa, but the thing where you give. gifts where you get put together a holiday for another family. That can be really helpful.
Great. Well, we'll take a couple more minutes here. If you want to keep sending in questions, feel free to do that. A couple other things I wanted to mention too was, forgot to mention in the beginning, this webinar was recorded, so it will be on our website here in the coming days if you'd like to watch it again or share with some of those other family members who didn't have the chance to watch it today. And also with that follow-up email that you'll be getting for the certificate of attendance, you will also be getting a survey as well, just to give us some feedback on this topic and other topics that you would like to see as we continue our webinars for individuals, families, and caregivers.
So yeah, just again, remember to take time for yourself as well, because it can be that could be the biggest gift you get, is to find some ways to um, rest and relax and do what you enjoy, and do what you enjoy with your loved one. Taking some time to do that as well.
Absolutely. Well, if there are no more questions, then Diane, I'll let you wrap up with any final thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was really, really great, and we had some really good questions. So thank you everyone for attending and being engaged.
Yeah. So yeah, I would just the big thing, you remember the 3 Ps: the predict, plan, and pace yourself for the holiday season, and everybody have a joyful one.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll wrap up here, and happy holidays to everyone.